Story 1. You're lying, you just didn't want to come to work. You always call out. I was in a car accident with my 18-month-old and totaled my car. Even made the paper. Up to that point, I had never called out. I'm glad they fired your incompetent self. Story 2. Handed her a Christmas card and she goes, "Oh, is this your resignation? We don't get along." But I try to remain professional and courteous. That comment completely threw me off, though. Story 3. Obviously you don't like yourself. So here are some tips to change who you are. 15 minutes of unsolicited advice on how to act like a real man. Story 4. It was 6 months after my son was born, and I had just put in new workstations and design software for my team. Everything was running pretty smoothly, but my son had a health crisis, and I was back to getting 4 hours of sleep each night. My boss started to want me to come in an hour earlier than the team to resolve any problems before they started their morning coffee. When I protested, as I was already working over 10-hour days, he took me aside and told me he had talked to the director, and they were thinking about replacing me because of my poor performance. It was all lies. The director was ecstatic with my work. Story 5. I don't want you here and I don't need you here. I never did. It was a small mom-and-pop operation, though. A family business. My family. My pop. My dad said this to me. Anyways, Merry Christmas, everyone. Story 6. One time I had a boss scream in my face in front of the rest of my coworkers because of a perceived mistake I made. It wasn't me. It was a vendor that could do no wrong. He was the son of the owner of a small family-owned company, the type of place that called you family. I wish I had the mental awareness and experience that I do now to have walked out at that moment. I ended up getting let go from that situation, the only job I've ever been fired from. I dislike people like that. Story 7. While getting my Doctor of Philosophy in Astrophysics, I had a brand new idea for a research paper. I built a framework for it, wrote some code, and showed some preliminary analysis to my advisor. In his typical fashion, he did not like the idea because it was not his. He called my idea high school geometry that anyone could do and a waste of time. I went ahead and wrote the paper anyway and submitted it as a solo author. It got published and was well received by the community and ended up being an important stepping stone for some of my future work. A few years after I graduated, the James Webb Space Telescope directly observed my idea, and a bunch of other people jumped onto my research. My advisor called me up and admitted he was wrong, which was extremely rare for him. Story 8. Boss left a signed contract to give to the landlord. I noticed the prices were completely out of line with the market, so I did some investigating and got some new estimates. I talked to the landlord, and he provided a new contract with significantly lower prices, saving my boss literally tens of thousands of dollars. Boss said, "You must have too much time on your hands." I asked for a small raise. The savings would cover my raise 10 times over. He refused the raise, so I found a job that paid me significantly more. When I gave him my resignation letter, he said he'd give me the raise. I chuckled and said he could no longer afford me. Story 9. Why didn't you stop him when a 6'3" beefy truck driver shoplifted 5 CDs by shoving them down his pants and running full speed out of our front door? I am a 5-foot petite woman, and I certainly did not get paid to act as security, let alone risk my life over 5 CDs. Not to mention, corporate had a non-confrontation policy when it came to loss prevention. That boss was an idiot. Story 10. No words were exchanged, but a department head in our store had a heart attack. When someone went up to his office to tell him, he rolled his eyes and closed the door. He wasn't the one to call 911, and he didn't step out of his office for a while, basically acting like it never happened. Story 11. Can you go through my personal computer and delete all old and unnecessary stuff? I knew I was going to find some embarrassing and unprofessional stuff, and he stood behind me the entire time. I found stuff. Okay, I have received enough messages telling me to share. For context, this was 20 years ago during a summer internship at a United States embassy. I was assigned to a division with the head of the department. He was a big guy, kind of loud and intimidating, no-nonsense type. The type that would get very angry and yell. He actually took quite a liking to me and tried to get me to be his personal assistant for things that shouldn't be my responsibility. He had asked me to do stuff on his personal computer before, which is why I kind of knew that I didn't want to look into his stuff. That day when he asked me, I knew I was going to find some stuff. He had me open every file, including pictures. I opened a number of pictures of him naked and pictures of women naked, as well as documents like how to please the clitoris. Nothing horrible, but they shouldn't have been on his personal computer. He also was not the type to have any shame, so when I opened them, he would shrug and say, "Delete that." The program was an amazing experience, and I gained a lot of great experience. When the summer ended and I had to fly back to the United States to continue university, he flat out told me, "I really like your work ethic. My next post is Afghanistan, and I want you to come with me. I will pay you $200,000 a year. What do you say?" I didn't take him up on the offer because I was a current student at university, but sometimes I wonder how different my life would have been had I accepted. The guy was very serious, and the request was legitimate. Story 12. You have maxed out on how much you can make here. I was the second lowest paid technician, yet I got to fix everything no one else could figure out. I walked out without 2 weeks' notice soon after. Story 13. The day before I left for vacation, my manager called me into the president's office. The president then called me a pain in his ass, among other things, and proceeded to list a bunch of things wrong with me. It was the first time I had heard any of those criticisms. Some were valid and some not. They hinted I needed to shape up or else. At that time, it was very early in my career, so I really believed them when they said I was the problem. Looking back, I realized how much poor management was going on there. Part of me wishes that I had quit on the spot for the president's language alone. Story 14. This was in the early 1980s before sexual harassment training and awareness were commonplace. I was probably 19, working in an accounting department. My boss said to me, "If you were my wife, I'd keep you barefoot in the winter and pregnant in the summer." The funny thing is, I did not take offense to it because that's how women were treated at the time. Story 15. Finish this project and you will demonstrate that you have the ability to lead a team effectively. That will get you that promotion. Annually, 5 years running. Story 16. I'm going to kill you. My graduate school advisor in front of a half-dozen undergraduates. Also my graduate school advisor. Listening to you speak is exhausting. Story 17. Boss was obsessed with being thin. I am not thin. He would constantly tell me to chew and spit my food, starve myself, and so on. One year, he gave everyone iPads for Christmas. Everyone except me. As he was handing them out, he said to me, "I was going to get you one too, but I thought it would be a better investment if I paid for half of the treadmill of your choice." Everyone's jaws dropped, and they all looked at me. I kind of laughed it off. I still cringe when I think about that. Story 18. When I called in tears, saying my grandpa just died, his reply was, "You're still coming in tomorrow, right? It's 11 p.m. I won't find anyone to cover your shift." It was not said with a bit of anger, but lots of concern. I told him that I would try to be there the next day, and I did. Working, being with fun, nice people, serving customers took my mind away from the hardships I was living, and by the end of the day, I was all smiles. It was the death I processed the best to this day. Mind you, he died 3 days short of a year after my other grandpa died. That time, I took the day off and felt terrible all day long. I later thanked my boss, a formidable man, for insisting on me coming in that day. He told me I could take any day off and it would be paid time, no issues. Best boss I ever had to this day. Story 19. We're putting you on a performance improvement plan, and frankly, I don't think you have the skill to do the job. It was a ploy to reduce headcount, and yes, I quit within 2 weeks of that. I hope the jerk's diabetes made him impotent. I'm bragging. The job in which the boss told me this was writing Android applications. I'm about to release one I've been working on to attract potential investors. Story 20. You are just a grunt. I outrank you and you do not need to think. What made it worse is that he was my best friend whom I had known since junior high. I lived with him and other roommates and we all worked in the same place. The things he would say and do outside of work were way worse. He would push buttons until I delivered an emotional response. He knew every bit of my trauma and used his own to write his behavior off as no big deal. In retrospect, it is pretty clear that I was in a messed up relationship with a narcissistic closet case. I am so glad I decided to stop talking to him. Story 21. I worked for Cracker Barrel a long time ago. One day, a manager asked me if I could come in overnight to blanch bacon. I'd never done it before, so he just told me what to do but didn't actually show me what to do. You basically just cook the bacon halfway. I came in and did the best I could from what he told me. Next day, or whenever I was next scheduled, I came in, and right when I saw that manager, he said, "You single-handedly ruined all the bacon. That was just a bummer to hear." I just hung my head, said, "Damn, sorry," and walked away. The crazy part was after I had walked around the line. The guy who was working the grill that day saw me and said, "I don't know what he's talking about. I opened this morning and everything was fine. I would eat this. There's nothing wrong with any of this bacon." Story 22. I had a work accident. I sliced my forearm and had surgery. Doctor said I would return to work in 3 months. My boss said it was a 3-week injury and stopped payments, so I took them to court. Story 23. While trying to work through a difficult task, I said, "Maybe we could try." He interrupted me and shouted, "There is no we. It's my way or no way at all. Just do it." I left for lunch and never came back. The permanent sign out front that said "Now hiring" should have been the first red flag. Story 24. Haven't you ever been a manager before? Said to me by the toxic manager who hired me 2 months prior to build and lead their team. The manager had less than 1 year of leadership experience and knew I had 20. Needless to say, it didn't last. The toxic manager thought they could do a better job and didn't need me. The team there still wishes I would come back and have been quitting one by one since I left. Story 25. The regional vice president stopped by our branch and wanted to have a friendly chat with everyone. When I requested more training so that we could all achieve the kind of numbers another branch was achieving, she gave me a dismissive response. I quit 6 weeks later for a much better job and career. She is still a regional vice president and never moved up. Story 26. I was 18. My childhood dog, my best friend, passed away at almost 12 years old. That week, I took more than 15 minutes on a break because I got emotional. My boss asked me what was wrong, and I told him. I said I was sorry and that I didn't realize I had taken a 17-minute break instead of 15. He told me, "It's just a dog. Who cares?" And he laughed in my face. I still regret not standing up for myself. Story 27. No one is going to want to work with you. They are just going to look across the desk and want to F you. Human Resources said it would be my word against his. So don't bother making a complaint. Alas, about 25 years ago when sexual harassment in the workplace was okay. Story 28. Are you only asking for a promotion because your girlfriend recently got a promotion? I walked out on that yearly evaluation and had a new job within 2 months. They even offered me a promotion and to match the new salary. Story 29. She saw my old self-injury scars and informed me that I was going to burn in hell. I was like 17. She then wrote me up for insubordination when I didn't do a task exactly as she wanted. I had no idea she wanted it that way, and it had never been an issue. I escalated to the general manager and told her about the burn in hell thing. The general manager must have sensed the danger and confronted the other manager before I escalated further. Story 30. Here, you are a teacher first and a father second. After making my school administration aware of my son, who was a student at the school, being bullied by several people in his class. Oh yes, I was also told, well, if it is multiple people bothering him, maybe he is the problem. So take your pick between those two, I guess. Story 31. After my son was born, he was in the intensive care unit for 3 weeks. After he came home, he had some ongoing medical issues. Later on, my manager told me that he considered firing me during that time as I was unreliable. I tried not to file the Family and Medical Leave Act and should have just done it immediately. We had no idea how bad it would be or how long it would go on. I didn't even know if my son would survive. One day, his dog got hit by a car and he sat at his desk crying. I struggled to have sympathy for him as he had none for me and my child. There was also an incident where I was slapped in the back of the head during training. I stood up and it took all of my might not to throw him across a desk before walking out. Story 32. I had a miscarriage at work, had to leave, and of course everyone wanted to make sure I was okay. I'm a state-tested nursing assistant in a nursing home. The assistant director of nursing was texting me. I told her what happened and called off for a few days. When I got back, my boss came up to me, told me how he was sorry about what happened, and that he understands what I'm going through. I was with my husband for about 10 years, not so much as one pregnancy scare, and being pregnant was the happiest I was in years, and that was taken from me. I just smiled and walked away. That really broke me for months. Nurses talk a big game about confidentiality, and my life was gossip. 5 people were pregnant at the same time as I was. I had to listen to them talk about how their pregnancy was going, and I lost mine. I had my first daughter in June 2023. I can't tell you how long it took for me to accept I was going to have a baby. Took me until I started showing. Haha.